Hey folks, welcome to A Friendly Orbit, the podcast that draws us together no matter how far we fly. I'm Ceres.
And I'm Theia.
How you feeling, Thea?
I'm feeling like starting an argument with a guy on the internet.
Oh, well, you're in the perfect mood today, because
Yeah.
boy, do I have the argument for you. Today we're going to be talking about D&D discourse, and why so much of it has so little helpfulness. I don't know, what's your experience with D&D discourse?
My experience with D&D discourse is you.
That was not a good rating of my character.
And hearing YouTubers sometimes talk about D&D discourse.
Yeah.
But I try to not engage in discourse online. I find that in many things in my life, I find it pointless.
That's well, you already are on the right track of opinion for the rest of this episode. But yeah, I feel similarly. My emotional impetus was sort of for this because I spend a lot of time online, encountering.
You spend a lot of online time.
I feel a lot of online time on D&D. Dealing with TTRPGs or like hearing people's advice, 5 quick fixes for whatever. I do kind of like that stuff because I find there's often nuggets of wisdom, but often I get this feeling of
it's like you listen to them and it's like maybe there's one thing that is good.
Exactly. But often I feel like, why do you only hear negative things about D&D? Why is it always full of problems? Or I think to myself, why is it whenever someone tries to fix D&D, suddenly everyone comes out of the woodwork and D&D has no problems, right? Why is so much advice that you hear really bad, actually? And why is it that when I give people advice that is objectively correct and has worked so well for me, they go, this is crazy and insane.
This could never work.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think I've kind of figured out why, and I've been formulating this argument and distilling it into what I would call the only D&D argument worth having.
Have you considered that it might be because people like to complain?
Ignition sequence start. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
All right, Ceres, let's get into it. Give it to me.
All right. My first argument is D&D is not just one game. So D&D, like some other games, has sort of a meta game to it. It is many different games with the commonality of certain elements of the rules. D&D games vary based on the players you're playing with. If you have very experienced players or players with interests in specific subparts of the game, people who are more RP focused, people who are more combat focused, that changes the nature of the game. What also literally changes the nature of the game is the number of players you have. Whenever you need to roll a perception check, let's say, generally everybody in the party rolls.
Yes.
If there are 5 people in the party, the chances of success are higher than if there are 3 people in the party. And yet, the DCs in the game remain the same. Medium is always a DC 15. Difficult is always a DC 20, regardless of whether or not you have 2 or 7 people playing.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that.
But D&D also changes based on what I like to call the interface. And the interface is how the DM describes the game. Is the DM asking you leading questions to help you in the scenario? Is the DM only describing the most visually necessary details? Or will the DM only reveal information if you specifically ask for it? Or does instead the DM tend to dump a whole bunch of information on you just the second you enter a room, assuming your character would perceive all of this? All of this changes the nature of the game.
I would add one thing, which I thought is what you meant when you said the interface, and which is it's a game that can be played both in person and online. And that's probably also a big factor in like the different ways that the game is played. I think the interpersonal element of it, if you're all sitting around at the table, versus if you're only seeing each other through webcams or not seeing each other's facial expressions at all, is a big deal. I have experienced that.
I think that definitely changes the emotional tenor of the game. But I also mean just the literal mechanics of the game. Like, if you're playing in the theater of the mind versus on a grid, that drastically alters the utilities of abilities. Like, Misty Step is, in the theater of the mind, much better than it is on a grid. And, like, area of effects in theater of the mind generally always hit two big creatures. Like, it doesn't matter how far the DM narrates them being apart. There is just a heavy bias when a player says, oh, I want to cast Shatter on both of them, that the DM says, sure, yeah, you can hit both of them with Shatter, even though you describe them being 20 feet apart from each other. Yeah. And it's like, that does not fit in the radius. But also, if the DM is narrating every single scene, right? Many DMs edit the story that they're telling. So they tend to leave out moments that you wouldn't see in a movie or that wouldn't make it into the book, traveling between, walking down from the tavern to the mayor's office or something like that might not warrant narration, right? But if it does warrant narration, it could cost you time. It could cost you resources. So that literally changes the difficulty level of the game. If you're going through every single fluff scene, on average, you will have less resources by the end than if you cut every single fluff scene, right? And I mean, those are really just elements of presentation and of the interface.
No, I imagine that there's a strategy called fluff farming, which is like you have to use every fluff scene to, like, I don't know, gather some materials, describe yourself picking up rocks, and selling them at the closest town to make up.
And the game also changes based on strategy, like how familiar players are with the game, or how strategically they want to play, how much they want to lean into their character versus how much they actually want to beat the scenario that they've been confronted with.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of these things, you could say, oh, well, but I know how I handle that situation, right? I know that I don't track any arrows, or I know that I skip the travel scenes, or I know that I adjust the perception check difficulty upwards when there's 7 people in the party. I make all my checks a little bit more difficult then if I think the whole party's going to attempt. And that's the crux of my next argument. It's not that you can't compensate for these gray zones in the game. It's that everybody compensates for them differently, right? And that's why it's a different game, depending on who you play with, right? Because you have as a group, or even just as a DM, depending, you have a set of assumptions that you use to fill this gray zone, this gray space in the game, right? So some people play super heavily by the rules, and they're like, hey, I'm sorry, I know it doesn't make any sense, but the rules say this is the way it is, and that's the way they arbitrate gray zones. Other people say, no, I'm going to make a ruling. I'm going to say the creature is in water, it gets disadvantage on its save against lightning bolt, right? So there's different ways to handle in terms of how closely you're sticking to the rules. There's different ways to handle how this resource depletion works, right? Some people say they skip the last round of a fight when it's not fun. Some people skip the last round of a fight when it's not fun and charge everybody 2 hit dice. Some people say, no, you got to play it out till the very end. If I don't see you kill the minion on camera, the minion is not dead, So I think this has also led to a proliferation of what I'll say very non-typical ways of playing D&D. There's like a podcast called Sitcom D&D where it is recognizably the rules of 5th edition D&D, but they barely use the rules. It's very much social interaction heavy, very much just rolling skill checks. Every once in a while a spell comes in, and a lot of improv comedy.
I think you're confused. I think that podcast is called World Beyond Number.
Yeah.
You must have forgotten the title because you don't know it very well.
Yeah, I don't know it very well.
Yeah, it's actually called...
Can you tell me about it? Is there anything I could learn from it?
Yeah, there's this podcast. It's called A Friendly Orbit. Let me tell you all about it. Yeah. The second episode.
It's a banger.
It's a banger.
Yeah, so exactly. Worlds Beyond Number does a similar thing, obviously without the sitcom comedy, but they also are very RP heavy, right? And this has led to the sort of truism when it comes to D&D called there's no wrong way to play D&D, right? Every way to play D&D is right. And I think that is true, but also exemplifies that there are obviously many ways to play D&D. That's implicit in the quote.
Yeah. And it's probably like if you live by the truism too much, like you risk ending up in a place where like meaningful conversations about the game never happen, because it's every time there's conflict, you can just kind of like hand wave it away with like, but
that's what makes it different from between it being true and a truism. You know what I mean? But yeah, no, you're right. And so I would argue, this is my next point.
It's a good thing that we have figured out the correct way.
Exactly, objectively correct. I would argue that these gray areas are actually not a bug in the game. And this is something, if you guys want to like read into it with like John Peterson, The Elusive Shift, this was also Matt Colville's video. Gary Gygax saw this as a flaw in the game because he wanted to be selling the totality of all the rules. He didn't want anybody to be homebrewing anything or making their own calls.
I mean, I think also to a certain degree, if you come up with a game and you put a lot of time in like writing your manuals, then you give it to other people and you see other people playing it differently.
Yeah.
Maybe it's normal to feel like, oh, I haven't explained it right.
Yeah, that's true. But I have to add context here. So the first edition of D&D was like basically unplayable out of the box because there were large portions of the game that were not covered by the
just
rules.
like use this other system for this.
And then for the second edition, Gary Gygax typed up a bunch of rules, which he admitted in person he did not use, right? So he just typed up rules just to sort of have every single corner of the game covered so that the idea was like, you'll never need to homebrew anything because I've covered every single possible scenario, which...
What a fool.
I know.
What a fool.
Seems like completely... Like, that seems absolutely like the position someone would have at the beginning of a movie, and you're like, oh yeah, I see how this opinion is going to mature and grow over time.
Yeah. Or like, 17th century philosophers, Descartes.
Exactly. I'm just going to cover everything.
Yeah.
But
Kant and Gary Gygax have been such friends.
But contrary to Gary, I don't see it as a flaw.
Contrary to Gary. Okay, I'll stop now. Sorry, I'll let you talk.
I don't see it as a flaw in the game system. I see it as a boon, right? It gives the opportunity to develop new methods of playing and new ways to experience the game so that it doesn't just have to be one game. It can be many games, and you can play it in different ways according to your needs, right? Mm-hmm. Imagine if, for example, there was a flowchart for how you had to describe every room and how much information you were allowed to reveal. Mm-hmm. Or if there were really tight rules around how much RP can influence a character's decision in the moment. Or really tight rules about how much information players are allowed to share amongst each other. It just, it very quickly becomes very litigious and unfun.
Yeah. And to everyone who's about to say that some rules about how much a character can influence an NPC and how that should be handled should be probably a part of the rules. They are in the DMG. You just have to find them. That book is structured in an awful way. But
buried deep in the Dungeon Master's Guide for 5th edition are the secrets of how to play the game.
Yeah, Ceres found it, like, I don't know, in 2022 after having played 5e for 8 years.
Yes.
And texted me. And I was like, yeah, I know. Because I had read the entire book front to back on a train ride. I
read it too, but I did not retain that.
I never used those rules, just to be clear. But
they are kind of oddly formulaic.
Yeah.
They're kind of flowcharty.
Yeah. I mean, there are less rules and more guidelines, as Barbosa would say.
Yeah.
The wisest character in the Pirates of the Caribbean movie.
So that's sort of the next thing.
You're so serious right now. It's funny how intense your voice and your eyes are. Like,
I'm trying.
I wish they could see your eyes. It's like, this leads us to the next thing.
I'm trying to structure a logical argument. I'm trying to do it right.
I know, but we're talking about D&D. We were talking about being silly wizards who explore minds. I'm sorry.
That's the other thing I do want to say. Like, I think most TTRPGs include these gray zones in them, these areas that are up to your own discretion. So though I'm using D&D as an example because it's what I'm most familiar with, I do feel like it's fairly broadly applicable. However, I do think within that bucket of nuance, 5e is uniquely wishy-washy with some of these things and is more wishy-washy than maybe some other games. I do think there are games that are a bit more rigid in the tone of the interface and stuff like that. Some of that is more sort of settled. But like D&D, like 5e is just begging you to make judgment calls on certain things and ignore certain rules, I feel like.
Yeah, it begs to be judged.
Yeah.
I think that's probably because from another Matt Colville video, he talks about how 5e kind of like doesn't want to be neither a dungeon crawling game, nor a heroic fantasy game, nor a sword and sorcery game. It kind of wants to be a system that can support everything.
Yep.
While a system like Blades in the Dark uniquely suits a certain type of story.
Yeah.
But if you try to apply Blaze in the Dark to tell a heroic fantasy game, you'll be completely lost. Well, D&D could be used, maybe in a clumsy way, to tell like a dark heist story in a dark gothic horror city.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be as effective as Blades is, but it could be used. But because of this, it has all these extra gray zones that a game like Blades in the Dark doesn't have. Yeah, I mean, as you said, probably it's like unfocused.
Yeah.
It's an unfocused set of rules.
So I guess this is the part where I'm going to kick sort of into next gear. This is when I depart from everything that, like, I don't know, Matt did in his video and stuff like that. This is where I'm going to start to do my own shit with it.
We're thinking for ourselves now?
Yeah. Now, as of now, we're thinking for ourselves.
Okay.
So is there anything here that's controversial that we need to recover?
I think we can move on.
All right. You should be structuring these gray zones of the game to serve a purpose.
Whoa! Mind blown.
You should have an idea of what version of D&D you would like to be playing. And I'm not talking about 4th edition, 5th edition. I'm talking about what kind of interface do you want to give your players? What do you want them to be doing in return? Here's a few example questions which read off like a philosopher questioning life. What's the point? What's the point of your game?
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of people say we're just here to have fun, right? I've genuinely played with people before where the quality of the narrative being produced was more important to them than everybody having fun, right?
Is that someone in the room right here with you?
No.
No?
No, they aren't.
Okay. Okay.
And that was like, that can be difficult to wrap your head around. The idea that if everybody sits down for 4 hours of play and has a little bit of fun, but produces a really cool story, they prefer it. They're optimizing for that criterion more than if we all sit down and it's all just kind of silly, but we all have a great time with it, right? Like maybe the narrative is like full of plot holes and, you know, ex machinas. It doesn't really make sense, but everybody's having a good time. And it
Bad DMing. I'm just kidding. No, but like, yeah, for the listeners, I do run a campaign where I try as hard as I can within reason to not retcon and to try to keep the world consistent and coherent. I don't think I'm a maniac on the topic. Like, I'm sure that if you poke, you will find holes.
There's also a third something that people play for. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm not saying this is the sum totality of all the reasons why you might play the game. These are just suggestions.
Good story, have fun. Yeah, that's it.
The third one was catharsis. This is like people who go to the gym and train every single set to failure. It's like these people just want to push themselves. They want to beat themselves up and put themselves in front of a big hurdle so that they can eventually overcome it. And it just gives them that overcoming sense of relief and accomplishment and pushing through stuff. I think there's people who genuinely want D&D to be difficult, to be a challenge, like a puzzle you need to solve. And I want to highlight this little niche pocket because it's incredibly unrelatable but fascinating to me. There is a group of individuals to whom the challenge of the game is the interface. So the challenge of the game is, how do I outwit the DM's description of the situation I am currently in order to win whatever the obstacle is that I'm in front of? So how do I describe how I search the room in the most detail? How do I find the trick trap compartment without needing to roll? How do I cheese my way across this bridge with just the equipment I have in my back pocket? Right?
So every time you open your mouth, it's like you're casting the wish spell every time.
Exactly. It's all about the way that you say it and the way you communicate. So you don't say, I touch the object, right? No. Okay, that is risky. It could be a trap. It could be whatever, right? So they go down this list. They've not grown as characters in the game. They, as players, have acquired a skill set of dungeoneering, of fake fantasy dungeoneering, because they know, no, first, I have a familiar touch it. Okay, nothing happens to the familiar. Okay, I have the familiar try and wrap it in a cloth and bring it to me. That doesn't work? Okay, I touch it with a pole. What happens now? Okay, now
A 10-foot pole?
yeah, exactly. Or 11. This is where the skill comes into play for them. What am I scanning the ground for? And how am I looking at the ground? And what am I, I'm looking for trapdoors and tripwires. Or, I'm looking for pits and hidden monsters or whatever, like a mimic.
That's also insane. Like, imagine like being like, oh, I scan for, pressure plates.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, you trip on a tripwire. Oh, because you didn't describe that you were
think
looking.
That's insane?
It's kind of insane.
You have not lived.
I have not lived. I have not lived with someone who will not mention who it is exactly. But I feel like you have life experiences that I just missed out on.
I have played with people where that would be the difference. I said I was looking for traps. No, you said you were looking for pressure plates. And this is not a pressure plate. And
that's insane, man.
There's no wrong way to play D&D.
Okay. If the player gets off that, then it's fine. Yeah, if the player gets off that,
we end up making the same point I've been trying to make, which is if it's good for the group, then it's okay.
Then it's not wrong.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. So that's one. What's the point, right? Another question is, what's the skill element? Is the skill element of the game building a really broken character? How many posts have you seen online where someone's like, my player built this really broken character. How can I challenge them? But if building the really broken party is the point of the game, it's unfair to additionally challenge them for having met the goal. You should give them the same challenge every single time, right? And if the better they build the party, the better they succeed. If the skill element of the game is to make tactical decisions during combat, on the other hand,
yeah, exactly,
then it is fair to challenge the better built party with tougher things. Because the point is, you can build any character you want. That's not the skill element. The skill element is what you do with them once you're in combat. Or perhaps, as I was saying earlier, the skill element is actually how you interface with the DM. In which case, placing challenges in the other two sectors becomes equally unrelated to the topic. Or perhaps the skill element of the game is the RP and the improv and producing a high quality narrative. In which case, now you know why all the combats in sitcom D&D are so easy. Because that's not the point. That's not where the challenge is.
Yeah, and that's totally true. I agree. I think maybe sometimes it's a little bit difficult between telling apart people who love making their cool character and like their broken build and people who want like to figure out challenging combat.
Yeah.
Because like if the person does the crazy build, where's the challenge from the DM as the dungeon master? You're like, great, you did this, but you could have done this with anyone. You don't even need me. You could just sit down and have a freaky night, just you and D&D Beyond for 4 hours, level by level, building
D&D Beyond and a handful of dice.
Exactly.
Anything you want could happen.
But so this is my I don't know exactly, to be honest, how as a dungeon master, like probably I would just have a conversation with that player. If like a player was just like, this is my super cool build.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I will let you, I will give you this goblin captain that is supposed to be tough for the others, maybe.
Yeah.
And then you waltz in with your optimized Hexadin Tiefling Goliath hybrid and destroy.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is the question there really is like, where is the challenge supposed to come from? Because depending on how you set it up, like if the challenge is supposed to come from combat, then you're encouraged to build the best character you want. But if the DM is always compensating for how strong your character is, you might as well play the most fun character and not the strongest character. But often people enjoy playing strong characters that are under challenged by the scenario they're in. So it's like a complicated question where you need to sort out, what is the skill element here? What am I rewarding and punishing in that sense, right? In a game, when you fail to do the skill the game demands of you, you generally are supposed to be punished so that you learn to become better at that skill, If you play badly in chess, you're supposed to lose because the skill element is how well you play, right?
Yeah, I don't remember where, but I heard a good piece of wisdom, which was essentially like, how do I make my players engage more with my world, care more about my lore? Then the answer is like, you need to make engaging with the lore part of the problem solving.
Yeah.
You need to give them a problem that they can't solve with their stat block, but where they need to, ask around, figure out how
the
this
game
stuff works.
should naturally drive them
Exactly.
to engage. It should be rewarding to do so. It should be an element of play.
Yeah. Like, I definitely feel like for my campaign, it was definitely like necessary to even figure out what the conflict was.
And I quite enjoyed that setup personally. Having personally engaged with that, it was very cool to be able to use the lore of the game to have these theory moments where you're like, if this is true about this civilization and that is true about that civilization, it must necessarily mean that there, is some kind of artifact that's prohibiting magic from being cast in the country that we're in.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, that turned out to be true. And it was like, oh my gosh, So yeah, I think that can be very
For
rewarding.
our listeners, by the way, I did not prohibit them to cast magic.
No, but like high level magic. And we didn't have the high level magic at the time.
Yeah,
it was just so we were never inhibited in what we could build. But it was just it was a cool plot element. And another one I have written down is, this is the classic argument about, do you have to make your persuasion check or do you just roll?
Mm-hmm.
Depends on what the skill element is. If the skill element is building your character, you should not have to actually verbalize your persuasion check. At least it should have no influence on the roll.
Yeah.
But if the skill element is the improv, then obviously you have to make your freaking persuasion check, right?
Yeah.
So I think this is a nuance that, as we'll start to see as we go through, resolves a lot of the discourse and a lot of like the endless arguments people have about games like this.
Yeah, I will come out now sounding like very snobby and very pompous. There is, in like film criticism, kind of like the two schools of thought: auteur theory and death of the author.
Oh my god, you are a snob.
Yes, exactly. And like generally, auteur theory is considered the more head up your ass way of looking at things.
So is it yours?
Yes, I wrote it. I came up with it in the 1920s.
Oh my god, he's a vampire.
If you were like under auteur theory, the first one, you read under it, the sign, it's me. There's my name. It's Theia.
Damn.
Yeah, that's right.
What's the difference between these two theories?
Well,
just briefly?
Essentially, auteur theory is about like, like you should look at like movies within the context of the auteur, and like you should consider their life and
what they thought, their political beliefs.
Exactly, all of this. And like death of the author, instead of like it is saying like, like you're allowed to essentially reinterpret freely a piece of media and like change its meaning based on like your view, the different times that we are in.
Yeah. Like, it's helpful to know that when modeling the relationship of Frodo and Sam, Tolkien was thinking of the relationship that someone in the military has to their superior during World War I.
But they are gay.
But if you want to interpret them as gay, Death of the Author would say, have a field day.
Yeah, to have a more like established example.
Mm-hmm.
The Hunchback of Notre Dame was not about the plight of the poor and the plight of Romani people.
Mm-hmm.
It was about how the building is great and God is great and people suck.
Oh, okay.
It was so much about it that in the finale it was revealed that Esmeralda was a white girl stolen by Romani people from Christians. That's how much it was not about that. But it became about that in the 20s or 30s as a response to the rise in fascism in France. They made an adaptation of it, which won a lot of awards. And that's kind of the version that created this new idea of what the Hunchback of Notre Dame is about. So that's, I would say, a classic kind of like death of the author versus
okay, cool. I've got my two theories.
Yeah, exactly.
Or my two schools of thought.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, I didn't want to go this deep in it because what I want to say is like the reason that people often kind of criticize auteur theories because film, especially now, but also back then, is such a collaborative medium, and like so many people have their hands in it, and like you can maybe James Cameron is like the creator of the Avatar franchise, and he put a lot of his work in it. But like there's so many people who left a strong, who left their handprint on the project.
Right, like he didn't write Na'vi.
Exactly, and who don't get nearly as much credit. And like it's kind of like this, like the auteur theory framework is the one that says that he's such a beautiful, creative mind who was free to do whatever he wanted.
Yeah, to be fully appropriate, auteur theory would have to actually follow every single person who worked on the project.
Yeah, or like make it all himself. Yeah. Which brings me to why in the world of like TTRPGs, the DM kind of like gets to be a little bit of an auteur. And this was all for me to kind of build up to the point that like I think that it's healthy to try to figure out what's the best way to play D&D, but like within reason, when you are the dungeon master, when a bunch of people kind of entrust you with weaving a story in there, to worry less about creating the perfect game of D&D and more about putting in your authorial intent into the story. Again, within reason and within, with it, having a discussion about with the players about it and all that. But you get to be really the artist who creates everything for an audience who will actually get to enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I think like most people who like are artists for like as amateurs don't get to have like an audience who really dedicates themselves
to
me
about
their work. So being a dungeon master, I think in a way is kind of the closest thing that you can get before you actually start trying to get into the public sphere, to making art and having a dedicated group of followers, which could just be your friends or 3 randos on the internet.
Yeah, and many DMs abuse this privilege.
There's a subreddit about it. I actually was thinking about it when you thought about the three things you brought in, like what do you enjoy about the game? And I was like, but there's also the captive audience angle.
Yeah, exactly. I just recently heard a story about someone who was like, you're playing D&D and then there's a time portal and they hop through it and all of a sudden he pulls out Magic the Gathering decks.
No!
Yeah.
No! I cannot believe it.
And he's like, you have to play Magic with me now. And they both walked up and left and he got really mad.
Of course. No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No. Oh my
Allegedly,
God.
According to the NADPOT Dungeon Court, it is true. They got a submission at least. I just thought that was so fucking funny.
Incredible.
So I thought I'm definitely going to use that in my next campaign.
No.
This is how I'm finally going to get Theia to play Magic with me.
I will stand up and walk away. Also, you already got me to play Magic with you.
But you have to like it.
Those are 2 different things.
We haven't tried it until you like it.
No. I'm sorry. It's
like they're stuck at home during COVID. They want to play Magic so bad at their local game store, and they fucking can't. And everyone just wants to play D&D, and they're like, "But this game is better."
Yeah. Well, he is wrong.
Yeah. Well, actually, now that we're on the topic, I do want to briefly mention Magic is also a game that I think is actually a meta game, like D&D is, where in Magic, there's not just one format. There's many different formats. If I ask you, is Lightning Bolt, which is a 1 red mana spell, does 3 damage to anything, is that a good spell in Commander? Well, in Commander, you're playing against 3 enemies and they have 40 life. Versus in 1v1, you're playing against 1 other person, they have 20 life. Like, just based on that alone, right? It's obviously much better when you're fighting against 20 life and not against 120 life.
Yeah.
So is there an objectively correct answer to, is Lightning Bolt a good card? No. And if somebody were to write in the comments, Lightning Bolt is an ass card and I never put it in any of my decks, and somebody else wrote and said, Lightning Bolt is a 4 of in every single one of my decks, what are you talking about? Both of them are correct, right? Because they're each talking about a different aspect of the meta game that is Magic the Gathering.
Yeah. Probably a lot less than with D&D. But yeah.
Yes. I agree. It's a nice example because in Magic the Gathering, you have these discrete formats. And it's very obvious when somebody says, is Lightning Bolt a good card? Usually the first reply is, in what format, right? In D&D, this is not the case, right?
Yeah.
I also not that response would work really well at D&D. What kind of game are you playing? I'm playing. Could you imagine if we had like a cool little like Myers-Briggs D&D game test, and you could be like, "Oh, I'm adventurous BA. This is my game type," and for that type of game.
Yeah, okay. If you want to use the Myers-Briggs as the metaphor, what are the dualities? Because Myers-Briggs is like 4 dualities.
4 dualities.
One of them is obviously theater of the mind or like the grid. That's obvious.
Okay. I didn't think that was obvious at all, but I'll buy it.
It's such a it determines so much about
mine is just, it's right in the title, game or role play. Because those 2 tense against each other. When you're playing chess, you're not going to make any moves just for the fancy RP of it. Or, you can, but you'll lose. and you won't be playing chess for very long.
Actually, this knight.
This knight is actually in love with the queen, so I cannot move him too far away from the queen because he gets sad. And it's like, okay, checkmate, buddy.
You're not playing the game right.
Exactly. And whereas if RP is super important, you're going to make mechanically inoptimal decisions, right? In order to get that across. You're going to be like, oh, well, I think I would actually be frightened in this situation because I'm so scared of the big bad evil guy. So I'm going to give myself the frightened condition. Like, if winning is the point, you'd be like,
what are you doing?
What are you doing? Stop! The bad guy already has hit points and everything to cover all how scary he is. You don't need to add anything to it.
It's like, but my character's flaw is that I'm a coward.
Yeah. So those are two dualities, and it's your turn now.
Yeah. I would say probably like hard world building and soft world building, or kind of like lore heavy and lore light.
Yeah.
I think that's, or like, I guess what I'm talking about is more like how much does the lore matter in the game?
Yeah, I mean, it's impossible to quantify in
Of course.
in 4 dichotomies. So yeah, sure, I'll accept that, and I'll do tonal, tone light, tone dark. Right? Okay. I think that makes a huge impact. If you're sitting down every 4 hours every week to feel depressed and then catharsis, or if
you're playing at my table.
Or if you're sitting down every 4 hours every week to crack a bunch of jokes and shoot some goblins in the face, right? I do want to finish some of these last points that I had under this point because I thought they were interesting questions. One of them we just covered. What's the story like, right? Another one was, how much initiative do the players have? I think this is a very common cause of issues. What constitutes railroading, for example?
You say initiative, but
yeah.
You mean agency?
No, I also mean initiative.
You mean initiative,
right?
Okay.
So, like, I mean, yes, agency is a part of it, right? But, like, are the players supposed to determine what the narrative is? Are they supposed to go find a quest and make their own fun in the sandbox, so to speak? Or are they supposed to find something that the DM has prepared and then follow along a somewhat curated road? Or are they supposed to do exactly the quest that the DM has planned for them this week?
Yeah, I mean, there is obviously, I think there's probably like, it has a little bit of a negative connotation when you put it like that, or like in general in the meta. But I think that there's actually nothing wrong if the players don't want to always be in charge of everything.
Absolutely.
If the DM just leaves them a breadcrumb trail to follow, and they just kind of like follow along and have fun with the quest that the DM sets in front of them. I mean, railroading is kind of like, no, you can't climb on the roof and do it like that because that's not how I planned you to do it. Yeah. But it's not.
I mean, railroading just has an inherent negative, unreasonable connotation to it. Yeah. Where it's like, I don't walk into the saloon and the DM's like, ah! And they flip their shit. Yeah. But I heard an example just today, actually, the same episode with the Magic the Gathering. They're sci-fi characters, time portal again. Yeah. Dropped in a frontier town. Everyone in the frontier town is scared of them, won't talk to them, and there's no quest hooks. And they've just been wandering around for 4 episodes. And then eventually this person talks to the DM, and the DM's like, well, I didn't want to railroad you guys into any one thing. And it's like, yeah, but we are desperately searching for something interesting to do. We are desperately searching for plot here. It's like, give me something, man. Give me.
Welcome to the anti-adventure world. Everybody's perfectly content. There is no conflict.
Exactly.
Like at that point, you become murder hobos. We're gonna make our own conflict. God damn it.
We become the bad guys. Yeah, I mean, that's the funny thing. Yeah. But the honest answer is people just check out, right? Yeah. They just don't. They're not going to play the game.
Yeah, I think based on our conversation, you can definitely say like railroading is when the DM tells you how you have to do the objective. But it's not railroading if the DM tells you what the objective is. But after this conversation, maybe we can say that railroading is actually a relative measure. Yeah. If you are in a sandbox game and suddenly the DM tells you that you have to go to the temple and defeat the Goblin King, and you ask why, the DM tells you, well, because otherwise this town will be overtaken by goblins, and you say, I'm okay with that. Yeah. It would be the railroading if in a sandbox game the DM told you that you have to go fight the goblins. But obviously, if your format so far has been the DM tells you that the villagers need help and you go follow, and one day you tell the DM, no, I don't want to. I want to go check what's on the other side of the hill. The DM is like, well, I didn't prepare that because I prepared the goblins. Yeah. Then the DM is not actually being unreasonable, I feel like.
I think it also depends really on the context, like you were saying, also in terms of game length. Like, if I'm playing a one-shot, please lead me to the plot immediately. We have so little time already to experience the plot. I want to experience the plot. I have a fun character that I brought. I want to meet the other people, and then I want to be dropped into the plot, right? Is that railroading If it's consensual, I don't know. Hell yeah, railroad me, daddy. You know what I mean? Like, get me in there, right? Get me to the fucking plot. I want to do the thing we came here to do. I don't want to, jerk around pretending that I have so much choice. It's a one shot. I get it. I'm here to do the thing, right?
Yeah.
Whereas if I'm
an adventure and I want my plot hook.
Exactly, right?
Give it to me.
Like, I think that's okay, right? Sometimes you just want to be thrown into an adventure, right? It's just, you don't always have to prove that the characters could choose to do anything in this moment, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's obvious what the characters should do and the players are all on board. Another one is, are you following the rules? You will not believe how many arguments online are like, if you just followed the rules, it would be better. And the person's like, oh, okay, I didn't get the rules, or I don't like those rules, or I don't want to use those rules. Like, do the rules in your game, this is one of those gray zones, do the rules arbitrate everything? Because it kind of says at the beginning of the rule book that the DM, whatever they say goes, and that all the rest of the rules are suggestions.
In the new Dungeon Master guide, apparently it's even more extreme.
Yeah.
Where it basically states explicitly that the rules are not meant to be a reality simulator.
Yeah.
And then like trying to apply the rules to make like the entire world works, it doesn't work like that. Like you will never be able to use the D&D rules to figure out how the D&D economy works. Stop arguing about the price of diamonds.
Yeah, exactly. And that's another thing that I would say is, what homebrew are you using? This for me was a real rabbit hole. You're just scrolling on people's homebrew. Oh, that's cool homebrew. I could add that to my world. Oh, here's a cool video about homebrew. I could add that to that world. And then if you're doing it without any clear intention of what your goal is, you'll be halfway through your epic, heroic campaign thinking to yourself, this custom critical fumbles table that I picked up online really isn't serving the narrative. You know what I mean?
Every combat, one of the characters like loses a limb.
Because they rolled a natural one,
Exactly.
It stabs themselves in the shoe because they rolled a natural. It's almost like that detracts from the whole point of what we're trying to do. Of
heroic fantasy, yeah. But like if you are in this super dark and gritty world where maybe you will go in and the DM is kind of like, don't get too attached to your character.
Yeah.
We're not here to play heroes who save the world. We're
Exactly.
here to talk about how wretched and dangerous this world is.
Or if you're playing Slapstick Are Us, right? Sure, if you're in a store called Slapsticks Are Us and you're a bunch of employees and you're playing, but it's still in D&D, right? The critical fumble table is amazing, right? It creates all sorts of spontaneous, funny situations. So that's another one where I feel like you can become you will never be done fixing D&D if you don't know why you're fixing it and what you're trying to do with it, because there are infinite ways to play D&D, there will always be infinite criticisms of D&D, and if you pick up on each of those ones and you try to fix it systematically, oh boy.
The game, you can't fix the game because there is no fixed version of D&D that will ever make everyone happy.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, I'm sure there is still like some optimum better than this, but the point is, if you just keep trying to fix the game until nobody complains about it, that's not really possible. You can only fix the game so that less people complain about it, So anyways.
I can do it.
You can do it?
I can do it.
So we've thrown a lot of questions.
In a cave with a bunch of scraps. No, a box of scraps.
Yes. So basically, those are a lot of questions. I know that can be overwhelming, especially like as a first-time DM. I would say just answer them slowly. Answer them with your gut if you have to, your experience if you can. But you should have some kind of idea of what kind version of D&D you want to run. And then you should fill in the blanks to streamline the game towards that.
Mm-hmm.
And this brings me to my next point, is that these questions not only don't have permanent answers, but not just your answers matter. So this is where I really come into the big conclusion at the end.
This is where you come?
Yes.
Get up. Get up. Get up from my fucking couch.
Get off my couch. So the only people whose opinions matter on these gray zones are the people you are playing with. And their opinions are going to change based on their life circumstance.
And the people I argue with online.
No.
Yes.
No, yes. Not those people. The
people who called me a cuck.
That is the point. Not those people. Leave those people behind. All right? Call them a cuck back. Turn off. Turn off Discord.
God damn it. I should have tried that.
Like, the only opinions that matter are those of the other players at the table with you who are playing the same game as you. Because suddenly their advice is speaking your language and makes sense in your world, right? And their opinions might also change over time, depending on how stressful their job is right now, how regularly you're meeting, how many people are in the group composition, or just maybe we've had a grim campaign and now we want to have a happy campaign, right? We're grimmed out for a while or something, right? So this is the part where I'm going to tell you that the best way to solve your problems with your friends is to talk to your fucking friends.
Wow.
Go touch grass and talk to your friends. If you were playing a board game and somebody every game targeted you and that bothered you, you would talk to them about it to solve it. Maybe not everyone has this experience, but if you've ever been in a theater production and you have a problem with one of the interactions on stage, you would talk to people about it. If you were the director and you didn't like how something looked, you would tell your actors. If you were an actor and you felt like there was a better way to do it, you would mention it to the fucking director. Why, in the most social of social games, TTRPGs, is talking to the other people in the group about the problems that you're having not allowed?
Because Ceres, the most social of social games, is played by the most antisocial people who would just go out and touch grass instead of playing this game if they could. And I'm not saying that we are like that, but I think that the hobby has grown on a starting fan base that was very small and very niche. And certain things were just not normalized. I mean, listen, but you have some stories that make me shiver.
Yeah.
And make me wonder, what the fuck?
Yeah.
And
like
it's not about
never question the GM, right?
Yeah, and
never invalidate their work. Or if you open your mouth, your character is saying those words. Right?
Exactly.
Like these are attitudes that definitely exist.
Yeah, and like I'm not talking about having different types of fun. I'm about hearing stories where people were just miserable playing a certain way, but that's just how they played.
And this is why I feel like this argument as a whole is the one piece of advice that applies to every single table. It's kind of how ego is this. I've come up with an argument that everyone else's advice is invalid, except for this one piece of advice, which is mine.
To be fair, your piece of advice is healthy communication, which, not to diss you, but like, you didn't come with the most original piece of advice or the most radical
Hey
one.
Man, I constructed a whole argument that got us here.
Okay.
But yeah, like, this is not metagaming. This is not bad. This is allowed. You should be talking about whether or not you're having fun on a regular basis with your players, with your GM. You should regularly be communicating about what the goals of the game are, and then actively using those gray zones we were talking about earlier to bend the game towards those needs.
But what about the 10-foot pole of immersion that I have shoved up my ass?
You are playing characters. So there's you, and there's your characters. Your characters are not having this conversation. Don't worry, it doesn't affect the immersion.
The pole is sliding out. Keep talking. You're doing something.
You as players are talking about it, right?
Halfway through.
I mean, this is one that really drives me nuts with online posts. How many times have you seen an online post that goes, I had a minor problem in game, then I suffered in silence for 2 years, now I have a big problem in game. Update, I had a knockdown, drag-out fight with my DM about it, and we're no longer friends. And then, like, the top comment is like, wow, this DM is a Nazi. And the second comment is, wow, what a mewling baby this poster is. You know what I mean?
To be fair, not many. Don't spend a lot of time discussing with people online or even just, like, engaging. I choose to have a healthy life.
Yes. Thanks for not backing me up.
Yeah, you're welcome. Anyways.
But there's so many times where it's like, this thing happened. I didn't like it. We had a discussion in the moment when we were heated. We never revisited it. I've held on to it for 5 years. Was I in the wrong? It's like, oh boy, buddy. You really should have let this go.
It's also like, it's not really about the content of the fight anymore. At this point, it's about everyone is at fault for not talking about this anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You gotta talk about what, like, it cannot be acceptable that we as players need to read the fucking tea leaves to figure out what the GM wants from us, and that the GM needs to read the fucking tea leaves to figure out what the hell we want from them. We can just talk it out, baby. Even if it's scary, you gotta get over yourself.
It's like a Mexican standoff.
You gotta talk about it.
So maybe this is a good point. You want to talk about what we have picked up as a habit starting this year.
Yeah.
In January. Yeah, we started since we reprised the campaign. Yeah, it's been always the thing. Yeah.
So what we decided to do, because as I said, I've been chewing on this for a while and became more and more aware of it, and I started to pitch the group more and more on it, and we worked out a system, and our system is, after every session, we really do try to keep it to the bare minimum. We don't spend hours and hours talking about the game.
No.
After the session, we have a 15-minute
Just the two of us.
one-on-one check-in, once with each player. So we have 3 players, 1 GM in our group. So every 3 weeks, it's your turn, so to speak. Maybe if we had more players, we would have to adjust that. But the GM asks, are you having fun? What are you planning on doing next? What excites you about the game? It lets the GM plan. It lets them adjust. If they realize that their narrative is not meeting your goals, it also lets them justify the decisions that they made so they can explain their viewpoint.
Yeah. No, and it's been very good. I mean, within our game, I would add there is also an extra layer of first, we're all friends.
Yeah.
And
that helps.
Second,
friends is kind of the perfect distance. Family is like, if I get in a fight with you, I can't get rid of you. Friends are they're close enough. You could trust them with most things, but you could ruthlessly cut them out of your life if you needed to.
I am, yeah.
We have irreconcilable D&D differences.
Yeah, and
we need a friendship
that destroys.
Divorce.
Yeah, and the friendship divorce. Yeah, and then the next session, it's like, why is their character dying so graphically? You're like, I need this.
Why is Theia not in the session? And also, why is Theia's character dying graphically on screen in an extremely embarrassing way? Ceres? Shut up.
I don't think that the Theia's character would relieve themselves into their own pants several times.
I just feel like Theia's character didn't speak like that. They definitely didn't call themselves an idiot that often.
Why are they throwing poop at the mayor?
I will kick you out next. Stop asking questions.
This is a healing moment.
This is how I heal, by hurting others.
Yeah, I mean, and then again, something that maybe makes it more necessary in our group is that we often like to homebrew stuff. We often like to homebrew rules, especially for the players.
Much. Yeah.
So many homebrew rules for players.
Yeah.
And
the monsters. I mean, literally, almost every single one of your monsters is either third-party content or homebrewed.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I don't know if I would consider that's the type of homebrew I think that the game is more designed to support. So I don't know if that warrants as much communication.
I think it warrants communication. I remember talking to you about it and being like, hey, these guys make us roll a lot of saves. They never really attack our AC, but your AC is kind of supposed to be your primary defense. Or hey, these guys always have these unresistible damage types. They're always doing force damage. Or I remember us talking out monster design. You were like, hey, I did this sort of dark vision devil sight combo on this devil. Was that fun? Was that good? And I was like, yeah, I think it's good. You can make us zag. You can make us sort of have to take an alternate path. It's when the alternate path also doesn't work that it gets frustrating. You're often flexible enough that you can zag, but often not that you can zig and zag.
Yeah.
You need a quite particular build to be able to, create a save and it's force damage, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, but all of this to say, so the discussions are also great for that, to just see how you're feeling with the system.
Yeah.
We have corrected a couple of our systems to adjust that they weren't working the way they were supposed to. They're also good, not just for the DM to figure out the relationship between the DM and the player, but also between players.
Yeah.
Maybe a player will not go to another player and tell them that they have a problem with this, but they will tell the DM, and then the DM can kind of hear everybody out,
and then
mediate exactly. And those are all things that happen.
Which you're pretty good at too.
Thank you.
I think maybe in a different group it wouldn't have to be the GM necessarily who mediated that, but in our case it works pretty conveniently.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I also don't think we have anyone who is an unreasonable person or who gets really upset easily.
Tip 101 to better D&D.
Play with good people.
Don't play with unreasonable people.
Yeah, that is good. But sometimes those unreasonable people are your friends.
Yeah, that's true.
To quote you, how many times have we seen a post?
Yeah, exactly.
How many times have we seen a post where it's I can't just cut out this person out of my life. I would.
But it's my dad.
But it's my
it's my mom.
Or also just they're a super long time friend, and outside of D&D they're not a problem.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't want to go up to your
in general, I have a ton of fun with this person, but their fucking Tom Cruise insert character is not doing it in my Ravenloft campaign.
Yeah. But they keep hitting on the women in my campaign.
Yeah, they keep taking off rubber masks. Mission Impossible.
And they pull out a whole new character.
Yeah. I also, like, another thing that just came to mind is also, are you playing the right game system? Which, like, sometimes I think there's better games out there than D&D, especially if you have, like...
If you know the game you want.
Yeah, exactly. If, like, you have a like, I don't want to say niche, but of course every table is its own niche in a way, you know? And if there are games that might serve you better than D&D sometimes.
Yeah. And they will serve you worse in other situations. But there's the art of figuring out the one that you like. For example, if you come to me with your cool Magitech city in the wasteland, you got your cool guns, then maybe between Daggerheart and Draw Steel, I will pick Draw Steel. But, you know, who's to say?
I mean, I think we should talk about those other games on a pod, but probably once we've played them a little more.
Yeah, no, for sure.
I'm very excited to talk about those at some point. But yeah. So this is my summary thesis statement. Your home game is one of many different ways to play D&D that are defined by gray zones in the way that you play. Mm-hmm. You should use your ideas and your players' ideas to fill those gray zones in your game according to those goals. Mm-hmm. You want to be consciously running your ideal game and not an amalgam of random advice from people playing very different games who are coming from completely different planets and speaking completely different languages.
Yeah. Or at this point, maybe kind of like, it's a good button, the very dreaded Matthew Mercer effect.
Yeah.
Where it's like, if you see a group of professional voice actors and professional D&D players playing D&D for an audience, that is not the same. Yeah. Both in terms of skills, but also like in terms of priority. They are trying to entertain, and you are entertained. But when you're at the table, the people you have to entertain are the people at the table, not people watching you. Because let me tell you, watching people play D&D who are not trying to entertain you is really boring. Yeah. Is really boring.
And I think that's my thesis statement at the end of the day, is that when it comes to D&D discourse, or TTRPG discourse, I think also broadly in general, you need to shift the discourse from random people online to the people actually playing your game. And like, when I see posts on Discord that are like, I have this player and they're doing this, can you guys give me advice? It's like, why are you here? Why is this DM to a Discord and not to the player you are talking about?
Well, that's the advice they're here to hear. They're here that they should be hearing, right? It's, you need to sit them down.
That's why that's almost always my response. Always my response is, talk to your player. There definitely might be some context here that you and I don't know. Talk to them and look for maybe this point, that point, and that point went during the conversation. Almost always that's my advice, because it's just like, it depends on your game. I can't really give you advice unless you really start to break it down for me, which is why some kind of Myers-Briggs game score, if it was actually good, might actually be a useful thing to do.
Perfect. Yeah, I mean, I usually always tell them to, like, you know, full frontal assault, validate them, and then, you know, just like gasoline on the fire.
Oh, okay.
I hoped eventually to turn into a crit card video.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you are in fact correct, and so correct that I think it'd be justified for you to buy a baseball bat and just bring it to the next game and sort of dangerously lean it by the side of your table. Yeah, exactly. Meanwhile,
perfect. Before we wrap this up, because I feel like we're wrapping this up, where are you on our Myers-Briggs D&D type indicator?
So there's a lot of these points that I can like take or leave given a conversation. I'm going to try and hone in on the things that I care about. Okay, I care about a good narrative. I care about editing. I care about a cinematic feel. I don't care for the whole reality simulator aspect of D&D. I feel like people underestimate that you have a human steering the rules. Like in a video game, you can't just...
must be tight.
Yeah, like in a video game, you can't just write code that's like, and if the player looks sad, give them a little pick-me-up. But you could write that in D&D because we as humans can identify when someone is sad, right? And so I am for rulings over rules. I am for flexibility in the moment. If something just makes sense, then it should just happen. You know, and players should be rewarded, in my opinion, for good play, right? I don't think you should reward good character builds because it drives that dynamic that then people just play a character that's not fun. That's a realization I had recently, where it's just like, I think you should just be able to play whatever character you want and then kind of tune the difficulty level to that. And I think you should be rewarded for the smart things you do in the game and the cool RP that you do in the game. So I'm on the narrative focus side. I'm on the rulings over rules side. I'm on there is a skill element to playing the game, but it is not the interface. It is the improv and the choices in combat sort of side. And I am pro player initiative, but not to the degree that we're making our own fun in a sandbox. Right? Like, I'm happy to be railroaded in circumstances, but for a long-term campaign, I prefer sort of being given 2 to 3 options, and then I pick those options, right? And maybe once every blue moon, I make my own option. But in general, I'm very happy with the DM presenting me with a few different, like, the next chapter could be this, that, and me being like, I think I would pick that, you know?
It's interesting. You answered my question from the point of view of the player, not the dungeon master. I meant it more from the point of view of the dungeon master.
From a point of view of a dungeon master, the thing is, as a dungeon master, my guiding light is I want to DM the way I would want people to DM for me. So it's kind of the same answer from that perspective. I want the players I want to maybe give them a hang of how the game works, but I want them to be choosing what sort of the overall strokes are of the game. I really like rewarding cleverness. Often I find like posts where people are like, yeah, my players combine these 2 features that nobody really considered could go together in a really interesting way. And
how do I stop them?
Yeah, exactly. And it nullified my challenge. What assholes? And I'm like, what do you mean? The kids are playing. It's beautiful. This is exactly what you want. You know, they're engaged.
Aren't you proud of them?
Yeah. Aren't you proud of your beautiful stallion is galloping? You know, this is.
Yeah.
I am absolutely happy to be like, yeah, you're right. Nope, that thwarts that challenge. Good job. That's for me a really exciting moment when I'm like, oh God, I think they're figuring it out. Oh God, I think they outsmarted it, you know?
Yeah.
So absolutely. I really like rewarding that. So I feel like it's a similar answer for me. What about you?
Yeah. Well, you gave a very, reasonable answer.
You just say that because you agree with me. You're in the same culture as me. There are people out there who would be like, he's a fucking Monty Hall DM who just wants to give his players a fun experience and won't challenge them appropriately and fucking biases his encounter based on their builds. Could you believe that? Why would you nullify my build? What's the point in picking a build then? And it's like, because it's fun, in my opinion, right? But for them, it's the skill testing part, is picking the right build. It's being smart and picking wizard and not being dumb and picking fighter.
Yeah. So let's see. Well, let me actually do it with the axes that we
I forgot our axes.
So one was like theater of the mind versus the grid.
Yeah.
So there, obviously, grid, but behind the DM screen, so the others don't get to see the grid. Only I get to see the grid.
Wait, are you fucking kidding me?
So the next one is like lore heavy versus lore light.
Okay, you're just fucking unhinged. You're
lore
unhinged.
Heavy versus lore light. I think lore heavy versus lore light. Lore heavy, but everyone speaks abyssal, and the character's not allowed to learn.
Okay, yeah, all right. So nobody knows where the fuck they are on the grid. All right, point number 1. Point 2, no one can understand anything. I got you. All right.
Yeah. What were the others? Well, hard world building versus soft world building.
Yeah.
The hardest world building.
Right, but they don't know about it.
No, they know about it, but like if they don't tell me that they're taking a shit,
they
haven't taken a shit in 3 days. Like
they're suffering severe medical issues.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh well, the goblins shoot at you and your AC is like a 9 because you're still in your pajamas.
Oh,
because when did you
didn't narrate putting on your armor this
exactly
morning.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like everything, like,
and you're getting stomach cramps because you have a shit in 4 days.
Every time they go out of the city, I'm just rolling random encounters upon random encounters. We're going through the whole thing.
All right, and now how can you ruin this one? The last one was tone light, tone heavy. Yeah.
No, it's super easy. It's like tone heavy always.
No
jokes, no breaks.
No jokes, no breaks, no fun. Don't even call me by my nickname. I am Mr. Theia to you.
I am Mr. Dungeon
Mr.
Master.
Dungeon Master, sir.
Mr. Dungeon Master, sir. May I wear my underwear, sir?
Yeah. Mr. Dungeon Master, sir. My character would like to take a shit, sir. This is acceptable. You shit your pants. No, I mean I take. You didn't say it.
No.
You didn't say you took off your pants to take a shit. You said you wanted to take a shit. You take a shit.
Perfect. I was like, okay, where's the bathroom?
Yeah, where's the bathroom on my grid? I bet you can't find it. All right, now come on, give us a real answer.
Okay, you want the real answer? Okay, I mean, I'm a sucker for world building.
Yeah.
I am not saying that this is the only way that I would like to DM. I think actually I would like my next thing that I DM that is more than 2 sessions to be a break from my usual style.
Yeah.
But I love world building.
Yeah.
I like the lore. I like my narratives to include it.
Yeah.
So I think that in my average game, you'll always have to engage with the lore to solve the problem. I like a challenge in combat, and I like to experiment with combat and game mechanics and to make my maps dynamic and kind of like
definitely noticed
rich.
that.
So I'm definitely like grid always.
Yeah. Which actually, like, for me is like, I could take it or leave it. Like, my default would be grid, but if I had 3 players and they were like, I prefer Theater of the Mind, I'd be happy to run a whole campaign Theater of the Mind.
No, I don't know if I would do the whole campaign. I think if I'm like, if the encounter is like low stakes, I'll be okay with that. But at that point, I might just turn it into a skill challenge and just give the players more narrative freedom to just describe something cool, make them roll once. You do it. You did the cool thing.
Which is also like universal homebrew that exists for D&D.
Yeah.
It's like not skill challenges aren't in the 5e rules.
No, not in 5e. But everyone has a YouTube
video. But everybody uses skill challenges.
They're just they might be now not in the big 5e rules, but they might have been introduced in the Strixhaven book.
Yeah, or maybe they put them in they could put them in the new DMG easily, I find.
Yeah, maybe they're in there, but I think I heard that like basically the way that you play the sport, the like magical sport of Strixhaven is a skill challenge.
Yeah, okay. What's that called again? Mage Tower,
sure.
Yeah. See, I didn't play the expansion. I played the fucking set. I played those magic cards.
Yes.
Tone Light, Tone Heavy was one.
Tone Light, Tone Heavy. Yeah. I mean, the last campaign was definitely more leaning, I think, more on the heavy side.
Yeah.
But we never, my table is always like, we crack jokes. I'm always cracking jokes or like.
Yeah, you even crack jokes in the voice of NPCs that are then not canon, which I know some people would be a no-no. They'd be like, if I take this NPC's voice into my mouth, what I'm saying is canon, is real. Yeah,
usually I crack a joke and it's like, no, he doesn't say that. He doesn't
exactly.
Say that. But I think I like the tone because of the narrative. But like I like to keep the tone in the story.
Yeah.
But like not at the table.
Yeah.
My table. I want you guys to come in, pull out the popcorn.
So what was the 4th one? Oh, role play or game?
Oh,
I didn't answer this one for myself either.
I didn't answer for that in my joke one.
Yeah. Obviously neither. It's what I say it is.
It's neither, because they're my captive audience and they're just like here to witness my story. So they will role play the way I say.
Yeah, exactly. And it's neither role play nor a game. It's a novel.
Exactly.
And you are here to hear it.
Exactly. And combat, they will win if I say so. Yeah. And they will lose if I say so.
Oh, okay. So, DM Fiat.
DM Fiat.
What a hell of a drug.
Yeah, exactly.
I would say between role play and game, I'm right smack in the middle. I never want to make the challenge so heavy that you can't make flavorful role play calls. Yet still, I like rewarding players so much for being clever. So if you are clever in the fight, I want it to matter. I want it to count. But I never want to make it so that you can't ever play unclever for RP reasons.
Yeah, I think like in my game overall, I have a little bit maybe screwed the pooch, because in theory, I think I consider myself there in the middle, right next to you.
Yeah.
But I think what ended up happening is that I often created situations that were actually quite hard, where you were forced to kind of play chess and not have any leeway for roleplay. But I also feel like when we have, maybe not in combat, but like in the more narrative challenges, which you have always taken very seriously with your character and with your style of game. Yeah. But like I've never like punished other players of our game who do not take the narrative parts so seriously, and who do prefer to do something silly and express more their character. And then I'm like,
I think that's also just a reflection on myself.
Yeah.
At the moment, and it's something I'm still working on, I handle defeat not well as a player, to be honest. Just to be fully candid and fully honest about my weaknesses. I have a hard time losing in D&D. So I think that's something that obviously colors our game. We sort of had a natural dynamic where I'm trying really hard not to lose, and you're trying to challenge us. And so the challenge has kind of kept creeping upwards and upwards and upwards. And then when eventually we hit the point where I was like, I can't play any more optimally than this, and I feel like I'm being hedged out of big RP decisions, then we kind of had the conversation. And that's only when I really realized what was happening. That's when I realized, oh, I think this is partially my fault too, right? If I had let us lose more, you wouldn't have been like, because I feel like you were like, wow, they're not really losing that much. I got to crank it up. Oh, they're not losing that much. And then at some point I was like, oh my God, this is insane, Theia. And it's like, well, you guys never lose. And it's like, because I'm trying so fucking hard over here. And it's like, okay, I have found tension. I have found a problem. I think I understand it even.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
so I wouldn't put that
at the
squarely
beginning-
at your feet.
Yeah.
I would say, like, I had a big component in that too.
Oh yeah, but I mean, yeah, there is no. It take at least two to tango in D&D. Always,
Yeah.
like there's probably not even like I could probably never even call the way that we play my style of DMing because the game that emerges from it, like it's really impossible to kind of like disentangle it from the way that the others play.
This is also an element of what we said before. The more you give each other feedback, the more you open up about your feelings, the more you strengthen the relationships to the people you are playing with, which when you're playing TTRPGs can probably only be a good thing, that you're living in a context where you can give each other constructive criticism, you can accept constructive criticism, and you can work with it as adults, and you can grow as people, and you can hopefully cultivate a table of close friends who you enjoy playing with. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
probably the best, like the good ending of like your D&D career is that like you have a regular group.
Yeah, you have a regular group of really tight friends, and then I guess the only thing on top of that is that they run for you too. That you don't just run for them, that they run for you too. And then boom, you can retire from all discourse. You're out. You're safe.
All right.
Do you have anything to plug?
I can't think of anything right now. Why don't you tell me what you have to plug?
First thing I'm going to plug is the episode by Matt Colville called "Arguing About D&D in the 1970s." I think it illustrates the first part of my argument quite well, that D&D isn't just one game, it is many games, and that's where a lot of our problems with our discourse come from. And the second thing I'm going to plug is the Not Another D&D podcast people, NADPod. They have a semi-regular show they call Dungeon Court, where they, in a joking manner, objectively rule on what is who is right and who is wrong in the cases that are submitted to them. And I think that is a great source for you to find where things go wrong. And once you listen to enough episodes, I feel like you honestly start to crystallize there's certain types of problems that come up again and again and again. And the issue is often communication. Not only is it very funny and a really easy listen, it's a great case study of other people's problems, and you can try to figure out how you can avoid it for yourself and actually get some good advice from it. So those are my two plugs.
That's great. I have watched a movie that came out this summer. It's called Transformers 1. You might have heard of it.
It's like the new one, right?
Yeah, it's the new one. And it's very different from basically all the mainstream Transformer movie that we received so far, even though, because it really
is live action, right?
No.
Oh, it's not.
It's not. It's fully animated, and it's set on Cybertron. It's all Transformers.
Oh.
No humans.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's basically X-Men First Class, but over Transformers. It's an origin story for Optimus Prime and Megatron, best friends, rising up and then splitting up.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think it might be the best piece of Transformers media I've ever watched.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I never really gotten into Transformers, even though I watched it Saturday morning cartoons. It never really truly captivated. I mean, I did like the first Michael Bay movie with the transformations, but
I mean that movie was, for its time, was something else.
Yeah.
It's probably the best one of his.
It's also just back when the transformations were like chunky and made you think about the interior engineering of these robots.
Yeah. In the fourth one, they introduced the nanobot Transformers. They walked back on it. In the fifth one, they're not there anymore.
Yeah.
They learned their lesson, I hope.
Yeah.
But
the lesson was money.
Mm-hmm. Well, another lesson they learned is in the fifth movie, no guy pulls out his wallet, pulls out the card that explains why they're gonna have sex with the miner.
All right, that'll just about do it for our 7th episode of A Friendly Orbit. You can find us at youtube.com/@afriendlyorbit, as well as Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Hopefully, eventually, we are actually making progress.
We're making progress.
I hope this bit doesn't stay evergreen. Although the next challenges we're not actually on YouTube except for a channel. We should actually post some of these over there. And if you have any feedback and you want to send us any questions, we will probably read them on air and make fun of you. So send them to us at afriendlyorbit@gmail.com, all one word.
All right, Ceres, I'll talk to you later. And to all of our fellow Voyagers, we will catch you out there amongst the stars.